Hello again, everyone. Welcome back to the Best Darn Diddly Review Show. This is a weekly podcast for anyone who loves The Simpsons, or ever has loved The Simpsons, hosted by two dudes that grew up on The Simpsons. My name is Miles, better known as Mr. Most Days Off, and today, I was going to say we're going to try to kill Richie, but then I realized I think we're going to try to save Richie. I'm not sure which. One of the two is probably happening. Either way, as sweet and sour as this episode is going to get, it's going to be more fun because we're doing it together. So welcome, your co-host with the most, Richie the Whiz Kid. How you doing today, Rich?
It's your co-host with the most diabetes. You know, I always thought South Park was the one that took the hardest jab at me, but after watching this one, I was like, there's a couple in this episode. I mean, I felt victimized and attacked in this one all at the same time. I don't know if that's even possible. But I'm doing okay, Miles. I'm doing okay. I feel like this was definitely another episode that it may not be quite up to the level as a lot of the other ones from the season, but it was pretty close, if anything. So still better than the least favorite one of the season for sure. But, you know, as I always say, that's what we're here to talk about. So let me throw it back to you, the man, the myth, the meanie beanie Bofini. It is Miles.
Yeah, dude, I like this episode. I got quite a few laughs out of it, and I liked a lot of the framing, especially with like the Duff Book of World Records, because that was something I did not see this episode when I was a kid, but as a kid, I was obsessed with those books. Like my friends and I would always get those.
There's a time around the early 2000s where everybody wanted to be in those books too. Mm-hmm. So I'm pretty sure it was like right around the year 2000, maybe 2001. So this episode, I assume, I forgot where we're at, but I think it's early 2002. So the timeline adds up that they would have been writing an episode about this around that time.
100%. It is it's January 20th, 2002 is when this episode, Sweet and Sour Marge, originally aired. And I've got quite a bit to say about it from the commentary, even just getting into the concept. But yeah, I 100% remember this was like a time pre like YouTube and stuff. So a lot of times people are trying to get their like 15 minutes of fame by bringing their town together to make like the world's largest pancake or like burrito or whatever.
Pizza.
I think pizza was legit, man. Like a huge one. And like, so you'd always have these towns doing these extreme things to try to like just get themselves on the map, so to speak. Again, then like 3-4 years later, you know, YouTube launches and then you can literally just kind of do it yourself. But
by yourself, yeah.
Yeah, different world, and just kind of a fun time to look back on. The Duff Book of World Records is absolutely based on the real life Guinness Book of World Records, but it's kind of cool that like the line that Lisa has where she says, you know, the Duff Book of World Records was originally made to like this or to like help settle bar disputes, and that was actually true. That was it. The real book was made by Guinness, the beer company, and it was legitimately created so that when like people would get in an argument at the bar, they could make a bet, and then they would have a point of reference to like settle the score.
I love the instant payback of that line in this episode too. It was really funny.
Yeah. So let me talk a little bit about the commentary track, and then we'll dive into the episode here. This commentary featured showrunner Al Jean, writer Carolyn Omine, who we may have met once or twice here on this show, Matt Selman, Matt Warburton, Tom Gamble, Max Cross, and the director Mark Kirkland. This, Al Jean pointed out, was one of the first episodes that was produced after the cast re-signed their contracts. So like they were going through a salary negotiation at the time. All of the cast re-signed, which is not the last time we'll talk about that over the next, you know, several decades of this show.
Yeah. That was a big deal back in the day.
Yeah. I mean, there's been several times where it's always been like, oh, is the voice going to come back? They're going to give them the money they want. You know, there's always been things like that. But at the time, the New York Times actually ran an article that was saying that the Simpsons were planning to bring the focus back to the Simpsons family, which Al Jean said, like, he has no idea who told them that, or like no one was like quoted, but he said it was absolutely true. That was something that he remembers reading and being like, hey, I like am currently like making those changes. What the hell? And
we have had quite a few episodes in the past few seasons where it's revolved around side characters. And, you know, I feel like for at least now, we've explored a lot of those possibilities. So it'd be good to get back to the core family for a bit.
It makes sense. It makes sense. You kind of,
Ebbs and flows.
I think it's probably a case where like the Simpsons writers, and I'm projecting and speculating here. I have no idea if this is true, but my thought would be if you're writing for the family over and over and over, week after week after week, and instead of having to ask yourself like, okay, where are the Simpsons going to, or what predicament are we going to find them in this week?
They're going to Mars, Miles.
Yeah, the Simpsons are going to Mars. I do like that line. But yeah, I can see how it would be fun to kind of explore side characters and things like that. Like, honestly, I think that would be very similar to like, say there's a podcast that like covers the same thing week after week. And then like, I don't know, 5 years in or so, they decide like they're just going to randomly go on tangents occasionally on off weeks or whatever. Like, I feel like it has the same energy.
And
but then you start to come back
random adventures, but you never actually do.
And you come back and you bring the focus on the family, dude. That's what it is. Maybe one day, I don't know what made me think of this, but maybe one day we should bring back Best Darn Everything. That would be something we could consider.
He's got to tease it at least once in every episode.
It's a new thing. I want people to want it back. As soon as one person is like, "Hey, I missed those," I'll be like, "Cool, let's do it again." Anyway. Back to The Simpsons. Carolyn Omine, the writer of this episode, was talking a little bit about the inspiration for how this whole story came to be. And basically it was because she was reading an article about how cigarette smokers were suing the cigarette companies for essentially giving them cancer, even though it's been widely known that cigarettes are bad for you and give you cancer for, even at this point, decades. And basically, Carolyn just kind of thought it was ridiculous that an adult person would, be suing about their health that they're responsible for because they made bad choices. And she started thinking of like what some other examples of that could be. And she got the idea of like, wouldn't it be funny if like obese people were suing McDonald's because it made them fat or whatever, which had not happened at the time that this episode was produced. This episode, again, aired on January 20th, 2002, which means it was written most likely sometime in 2001. But funny enough, this outrageous concept that Carolyn was able to like fabricate in her mind, turns out July 2002, we're talking 6 months later, there is in fact a case of that exact same thing. A man by the name of Caesar Barber at the age of 56, who weighed 270 pounds at 5'10". He claimed McDonald's, Burger King, Wendy's, and KFC jeopardized his health with their greasy, salty fare and filed a class action lawsuit just 6 months after this episode aired.
Did he win his lawsuit?
I honestly don't know. I didn't really care to look too far into this lawsuit, frankly, because it seems ridiculous. I would highly guess
the way our world works.
I would guess that he didn't. I would guess it didn't go to court. I would guess that they just got settled. In fact, here McDonald's just settled a $12 million lawsuit and apologized for wrongly describing its French fries as vegetarian. Was a similar. The point is, all of these lawsuits, there's going to be many of them that break out, but Carolyn actually had the foresight to kind of see it coming, or at least think of how, like, what the most ridiculous next step would be in this situation.
That might have been around the time where McDonald's changed their chicken, Miles. So I don't know. When they changed it to real chicken or whatever, they started
different. McDonald's Deluxe or Chicken Select, I don't remember. It was something like that. But
they all stopped eating the 20-piece nuggets at that time because they changed it and it started tasting terrible.
It was weird. Yeah, it was a weird time. Anyway, before we kick off the Act 1, which we're about to do, I'll just say this last bit for now. While toying with this idea of like, the idea of like fat people suing McDonald's or whatever, she just kind of had the realization that there are a lot of abundantly overweight citizens of Springfield. And that is kind of where it launched into, and she started toying with the Guinness Book of World Records, and this idea was born from that inspiration, which it's something we talk about. It's really cool when we get to hear, like, obviously these are very creative and talented people, but it always takes a spark, and it's fun that she kind of took it like 4 or 5 degrees away from that original spark of an idea.
What I really appreciate about the writing in this episode is that the opening act a lot of them lately have been completely random to get you to the point of the story. But I felt like the opening act in this one actually tied very well into the main core of the story. Like it all had to do with each other basically, and I really appreciated that in this one. It felt like a much better flow.
Sure. Yeah, I would agree with that. This it doesn't have that like abrupt like, oh, look over here, now we're talking about this, ignore everything that you've seen previously, or maybe we'll get like a callback to it, but most likely not.
Now that I know that Carolyn did this episode, it makes you want to pay attention to the next one we see about her and see if it's something similar.
You know, at the beginning, Rich, I'm not sure if you're aware, but there's these words that pop up on the screen during the opening of the show, and it'll usually give you some idea of who does what. You'll notice it's mostly producers, though, as our boy last week pointed out.
What I'm usually doing during the credits is making sure I don't miss the chalk gag, which I totally did miss this time because it wasn't there. And
I was going to say, you didn't miss much.
I'm usually opening my bag of chips and soda and writing down the name of the episode on my notepad while this part's happening.
I love how you just like openly are like, yeah, I'm so ill prepared that I can't take the 30 seconds to get my snacks and stuff in order before I hit play.
Oh man, my schedule is I get home, and it's like 4 a.m. and I'm like, I'm going to do this before I take my shower. That way, once I'm out of the shower, I'm good to do whatever I want, whether it's lay down or play games for 30 minutes.
God forbid you have to watch an episode of The Simpsons post-shower.
Exactly. So I go as fast as possible so that I have as much me time as I can have. That's how I drive like a maniac on my way home from work, and I don't know what I'm trying to rush home to. I always ask myself, why are you in such a hurry to get home? And I think it's just I want all the time I have in the comfort of my home.
I'm glad that you're willing to make the sacrifice it takes to dedicate 23 and only exactly 23, not any longer minutes, to this podcast.
I've been waiting 6 years for you to say that, Miles.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Happy
so that all the condolences are, I don't know. I don't even know. Condolences for me.
See, he can't
condolences
even talk
for me is what I need. Yeah.
All right, I did pay attention to one thing. I did pay attention to one thing in the credits today.
What's that?
And it was the end credits, and it was the guest star voice. I actually always watch the end credits because I want to make sure I got the guest voice right. This is only the second time I think that I could not recognize the guest actor's voice.
Oh, interesting. I immediately recognized it, but I do have stuff to say about it when we get there.
That's called a tease again, Miles. I'm good at doing that about once an episode.
There you go, man. So let's get into this episode. As you already pointed out, this episode does not feature a chalkboard gag. That's 2 weeks in a row where it's a longer episode. We get the couch gag where a bear claw machine style of claw comes down and grips Homer by the head and pulls him off the couch. I think he screams, my brain, or something of that nature. It's pretty funny. I like it. And we good?
I said, yeah, it was. Sorry, I had to mute myself because I had to burp. So that's behind the scenes for all the people. Right
on, man. Right on. The episode officially opens at the Springfield Library where they are having a book sale, and there's a sign that that suggests or explains that yes, that includes pornography.
Yeah.
I do love Homer's first line. This is a very good observational joke here because he walks in, he's like, a library selling books. If I don't want them for free, why would I want to pay for them?
Why do you always wait until we arrive to complain?
I don't know.
That's right.
My interpretation of that is just Homer is so like dumb that he doesn't realize that he's going to hate something until he's in the middle of it. Like he doesn't have enough, like it's almost like a goldfish memory style thing. He doesn't just like hear like library book sale and assume that's going to be something he hates. He has to get there and feel the hatred first.
Way to cover the show as a real entity, Miles, or it's just the fact that it's the writer, they're taking a jab at themselves because Homer's always going to these things that everybody knows he's going to absolutely hate.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, he's being put in the classic fish out of water situation, but I still think it fits the character is what I'm saying.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. We see other Springfield. I guess we're not focusing on the family, huh, Al? Because we immediately cut to the other townsfolk. We see it's comic book guy is looking at the Leonard Nimoy cycle, which is a book called I Am Not Spock, followed by I Am Spock. And finally, I am also Scotty.
The last one, the picture was really funny.
Yeah. Though I have to say, I really love Dr. Nick's portion here better because Dr. Nick is reading Grey's Anatomy, and it's not like show fan fiction, but the actual like medical book that he was like, or that show is based off of. And he's learning, he's basically like, oh, that's what the inside of a human body looks like. And then my favorite is like, oh no, this woman swallowed a baby.
Yeah.
But we see Lisa, as you would expect Lisa to be in this environment, with a cart overflowing with books at the checkout register, which Marge says that Lisa's not allowed to buy more than her own weight in books, which is still a good amount of books, really, especially if you go paperback.
Ooh,
but
nice.
Lisa explains that she has to save as many of these books as possible because the ones that nobody buys get turned into pig feed. And of course, we actually cut to this because Cletus, for whatever reason, is inside the library, tearing up a book and feeding it to his pig, saying like, oh man, this novel's getting my pig's Bridget Jones diarrhea.
Yep. And we get another spot with him later in the episode that I like when his signature is so pretty, Miles.
He does have remarkably good handwriting.
Yeah, and it throws you off.
Yeah. But the more amazing fit we find here at the book sale is that Marge even finds a book that Homer would like. And it is the book we've been talking about on the pre-show or whatever you want to call that.
Nice. I like it.
The Duff Book of World Records, which again, we already talked about, is actually based on the real life Guinness Book of World Records. And Marge is dead on because Homer immediately starts flipping through this book.
He sells them on the deformities in the book.
That's true, which, let's be fair, I remember as a kid, you'd always go to like things like the dude with the longest fingernails, which we actually saw animated in this, and like, you know, the people that would have like the odd like things growing out of their face or whatever. Like that's you know, what made this, it's same with like Ripley's Believe It or Not or whatever. That's what's interesting to see. It's something that's different than what you are, but also the same because we're all human.
Eloquently put, Miles, as usual.
Yeah, man. I would not go that far, but yeah. This is where we get the great line because Bart's like, why would a beer company put out a book? And Lisa explains that it was originally published to settle arguments in taverns.
She said, tavern. I'm going to Moe's.
This is almost like calling dibs. She said tavern, like as if it were the secret word. And Marge is like, I never agreed to that rule, but it's too late. He's already tired screeching out of the parking lot. He's on his way to Moe's.
So did he take the car? So how's the family?
He completely ditched his family at the library, which, let's be fair, that gives Lisa time to like read away some of her book weight. But like, that's a pretty dick move for sure.
I also wonder if the library is like within walking distance of the Simpsons house. Well, no, Moe's is within walking distance because we saw Moe walk from the bar to Homer's house whenever they made their own bar in his garage.
Yeah, but we also hear tires screeching as he leaves the parking lot, implying that Homer took the car for sure.
Yeah,
I guess if the bar's within walking distance, the Marge and the kids can walk to Moe's to get the car.
There you go.
Again, either way, it's not really a great look for Homer. I won't lie. It's more in the jerk ass section and less of the just dumb section. But ultimately, I stand by it. It's just Homer. Homer is funny. Very well, yeah. Obviously, that's the point. Is it's funny, but Homer has been very open about his love for beer, so I don't think it's a surprise to anybody.
Well, and he's got this new toy to play with at the bar that's literally made for a bar. It's
made for the bar. Yeah, honestly, it's kind of is a great fitting. And I do like the way that they got Homer out of the book sale. They basically gave him the plot device we needed him to have and then immediately got him to the place he needs to have it in a fun way. Mm-hmm. And I like that.
And this is where we get what I was talking about earlier, like the instant callback to it was made to settle tavern arguments.
Because at Moe's, Lenny and Carl are literally in the middle of an argument over who I think it's I say the most clothespin a man could attach to his face is 87.
You counting the neck?
You know I am.
All right. Outside.
And they are literally about to go to blows because they can't agree on the number of
clothespins. Not Lenny.
the number of clothespins that are attached to a human's face or could be attached to a human's face. But as they start to walk towards the door, a heavenly light appears from the doorway, and Homer appears like in silhouette form, holding the Duff record book over his head.
Peace, my brothers. All shall be looked up. Let's see. Most clothespins swallowed, inserted. Here we go. Clip to face and neck. 116.
And we see a picture of the man who just has his entire face covered in clothespins. And Lenny is immediately like, oh, geez, I was wrong. But I ain't angry.
And I'm magnanimous in victory.
Magnanimous.
Magnanimous. I know how to speak sometimes.
It's all good. Reading's hard. But you know what?
Been hot garbage last 3 weeks at this point.
Dude, you might be able to get into the Duff Book of World Records for like worst eyesight while still reading for a podcast.
No, I forgot. Remember I had that surgery a few weeks. Maybe that's why I've been having trouble. Sometimes it takes a few weeks for everything to readjust all the way.
You're just not used to all the clarity.
No, it's not that, but
that's the reason I don't use windshield wipers. It just fucks me up if I'm not looking through like a sheet of water while it's raining.
No, don't do that.
Mo is like even impressed. He's like, wow, that's the best book I've ever seen. But he's immediately corrected by Homer with the book.
That would actually be Tom Clancy's Op Center.
And Mo just accepts that. He's like, wow, that book knows me better than I know myself. Yeah. But you can tell that it doesn't take long before Homer has kind of overused this book to some degree, because we cut to the Simpsons dinner table or breakfast table, I'm not sure which, and Homer is still like reading from the book. But at this point, anytime he asks for a record, everyone in the family is like boredly like, yeah, we know this one. It's like if you've heard the same test questions over and over and over and over again. Mm-hmm. So Bart actually has a great suggestion. Since he is so invested in these world records, maybe he should try to set one of his own.
He said, you think I could run the fastest mile? 3.5 minutes?
Lisa's like, maybe on Mars.
The Simpsons are going to Mars.
I love this because it's a very self-aware joke. I think that they're like obviously making fun of the fact that we've done that at least 6-7 times now, where it's like the Simpsons are going to New York, or the Simpsons are going to Africa, or, you know, where all the places that they've been.
The Simpsons are going to Idaho.
We see, though, that there is, in fact, an office for the Duff World Record Division, and there's people in the waiting room that, you know, like we talked about, the guy with the long nails, and there's like a heavily bearded person, and Homer sits down to a large man and is like, wow, you're a cinch to be the world's fattest man. But this is very clearly a depiction of Marlon Brando.
No, I'm here for the greatest living actor.
Poor Marlon Brando. There are legends and stories about him towards the end of his career, though, because he was at one point he is a legendary actor. You know, lots of like very big roles and very good movies that he was a part of, that he starred in. I meant to say memorable roles for what it's worth, but
there you go.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't mean to fat shame him again, but yeah, that worked out. But towards the end of his career, he was known for a couple of things. One, he really did let himself go from a health standpoint. He became very, very large in his late in his career. And there's several stories from movies that he's on, things like The Island of Dr. Moreau and The Score, and some of the movies towards the end of his life and career, where there were things like he basically refused to learn a script. I think for The Score, that he had an earpiece in, and he would just have somebody feed him his lines every time. So he's both a very talented person with an incredible career and somebody who became like almost a parody of himself to some extent. So very easy to make fun of.
All right. Way to somber the mood.
I don't think I sombered the mood. I mean, The Simpsons did it.
That's your excuse for everything.
But Homer is like there to figure out what record that he could possibly make, and he just declares himself in front of the panel or whatever. I'm here to break a world record. What's the longest anybody's ever done? This
3 years.
Fine. I'll just play the banjo with this cobra. So he gets a cobra out of a basket, and he's trying to get a song going. But he's like, wait, wrong note, wrong note.
Technically, the cobra would get the record. He's the one playing.
But it's my banjo.
Mr. Simpson, there are thousands of people like you with no discernible talent. I got that word right.
Nice. Yeah, they're called Congress. And he like kind of mugs to the camera on this one. Like they know that they're doing like a hokey joke, but immediately the lady behind him is like, shut up.
I thought it was funny.
I also thought it was funny, but I think it's funny because they leaned into it of like how like
yeah. Almost like Jim looking at the camera in the office.
Yeah. So they explained that all the original records were set by crackpots who half killed themselves. And now the only way someone new can get in the book is with some kind of group stunt.
Group stunt?
Like that town that made the world's largest omelet.
Denver?
No, Spanish. But and they even do like a little like banjo jingle here to like really like over the pun. It's great. I also like this joke for what it's worth.
I did too.
So Homer has essentially gotten a mission to rally the troops, if you will, the townsfolk of Springfield, with a goal to set a record. And he comes up with the tallest human pyramid, which is actually a really cool shot because we simply get a huge number of Simpsons characters in a very unusual way because they're literally stacked on top of each other.
Just puts the worst person on the top of the pyramid.
They did pick. They obviously should have chosen Marge and then put Maggie on her hair if they really want that extra boost. But Marge's hair gives them the perfect boost.
I was thinking the same thing.
Yeah. So basically, it works out that Homer is going to be the top of this triangle. I do like he's checking the blueprints, and it's literally just like a child's drawing of a triangle, and he's like, "Yep, this looks right." So he's climbing up, and we get this really cool, like it's almost like cliffhanger. I
couldn't tell if it's cliffhanger or Mission Impossible. I thought it was cliffhanger at first, but then when he fell and was holding on to it backwards, like MI2, then I was like, was MI2 out at this point? I don't remember.
I believe it was. I could be wrong. Honestly, I don't really remember, but I believe it actually came out this year. So that like 2002, I mean. So that could very possibly be a Mission Impossible reference. It could also still be a cliffhanger reference.
Cliffhanger makes more sense.
There was also another big like rock climbing movie, something Horizon, I think. Vertical Horizon, that's what it was. But Mission Impossible 2 did come out in 2000 for what it's worth.
Oh, okay.
Either way, this was a fun like rock climbing montage.
Yeah.
Where Homer is like climbing up. He has a fall at one point that looks like he's going to go to his doom. He's able to hold on. That was when he was holding on to Bumblebee Man's stinger, and it like snapped and caused him to fall, even though he was like, no moss, no moss. And all of this goes awry because of the homophobia that real life teenagers would definitely feel in 2002, because Jimbo and Nelson, I think it is, are Jimbo and Kearney are next to each other, almost dead center in the middle of the triangle, as if if this were like, say, a 9/11 situation where it was obviously planned in advance to fail, like this would be the point that you would place the thing to make it collapse intentionally. I'm just saying, conspiracy, y'all, conspiracy. But no, Jimbo and Kearney, basically, Jimbo's like, hey man, you're touching my hand, and they're like, ew, and like that obviously causes the whole thing to fall. They all collapse into this giant ball.
This is on
humanity.
2 Mississippi. They just have to hold on for one more Mississippi.
That's right.
Homer made it back to the top.
If they could have just been a little bit of comfortable with their bro touching for another second, it would have been fine.
Homer had put Maggie on top of his head to give him the extra foot he needed to make the record possible. They had to hold it for 3 Mississippi, and on 2 Mississippi, they let go.
Yeah, for sure. And again, it turned into like, oh my God, what's that? Calamari? Calamari is fried squid. Yeah. Katamari was that game where it'd be like you're just like a ball rolling and you're like collecting more and more stuff. That's basically what this was, only with Simpsons characters or townspeople or whatever you want to say. It was this giant ball that just started rolling through the town. We get some really fun moments on this, though, because my personal favorite is there's a guy trying to kill himself by jumping off of a roof, and he just so happens to time it so he lands on this giant ball that's coming
cruel
by.
World. Hello, ironic twist.
Yeah. I really enjoy this, and all of this culminates with the townspeople landing in a giant heap. Just so happens to knock a truck trailer off of the scale and land on the weighing station, where the people that were doing the sorry, I almost said Guinness, but the Duff records noticed that the total weight is 64,162 pounds. And after doing a little bit of math to divide by the number of people,
subtract by belts and shoes,
and they see that they in fact have a new record in the Duff Book of World Records. Springfield is the world's fattest town.
Woohoo! Yay! In your face, Milwaukee.
And that brings us to the end of our first act at 6 minutes and 19 seconds. So that's a pretty balanced time, as we've talked about a lot on this show. They had some interesting stuff to say on the animation side from the commentary on this, because that town pyramid and the ball of people was an animator's nightmare. They said it was one of the more challenging things that they've ever had to do. And it led to an interesting conversation about hand drawing versus computer drawing, which I'm going to save the talk about cells for the very, very end. But as far as the town pyramid and the ball go, the way that they were eventually able to get the ball to work was they actually bought a bunch of globes. And then they would draw the Simpsons characters out on the globes, and then they would use it, like put it back on its thing to make it spin. And they would basically do that in different configurations so that they could see it moving in different ways. And that was the way that they actually got their point of reference to get these ball of people rolling through the town. They also borrowed heavily from a technique that was developed in Disney's 101 Dalmatians, where Cruella de Vil's car is seen driving through the streets. I'll be honest, as somebody that isn't super into visual art, so I don't have like a good eye for like drawing, and I don't have a lot of understanding of it myself personally. I did get a little lost in some of their commentary on this, but essentially it has heavily to do with the use of like black space and shadows to essentially make the in the 101 Dalmatians case, it was Cruella's car. In this case, it's our ball of rolling fat Simpsons characters. But basically it's this fun technique that makes it have like more life and more more three-dimensional sense to it. Exactly.
Yeah. Thinking back on 101 Dalmatians for how old that is, I can kind of remember some of the scenes. It's been years since I've seen it. I've heard driving around. I think it might've been snowing too and whatnot. And it looked different than when you're inside the home with all the dogs and the two people. So yeah, I can get that.
I honestly don't know if I've seen 101 Dalmatians since it was out in theaters, frankly. It's been a long time for me, but I thought Dalmatians it was cool.
are loud animals.
That's true. Yeah. They are barkers.
Mm-hmm.
But I thought it was an interesting, it's always fun to hear, like, when the Simpsons, they're so used to drawing essentially the same thing every week to some extent. So anytime you get those unusual situations that really put a challenge on the animators, it's kind of fun to hear how they handle those.
Yeah, something that only lasts a few seconds on screen, but probably cause them, weeks of pain.
Yeah. But that is the end of our our first act. So opening up in our second act, we see that Mayor Quimby is proclaiming proudly that Springfield is Fat City, USA, and almost everybody is ecstatic. Homer even has a t-shirt that says Fat Pride on it, and he very happily declares, now that everybody's so open about being fat, I can finally stop sucking in my gut. And we see that Homer's actually been fatter this whole time, apparently. He's just been being polite because he knows he's being watched by us. You can instantly tell though, that there's one person in town that is not really digging this sense of pride in being fat. Marge is visibly uncomfortable, and she kind of is just wondering why the town is so obese, but that gets her to start observation at home, where we basically see everything that they're eating is like sugary cereal and Pop-Tart type things. To be fair, Homer seems to eat pretty healthy because he has a half of a grapefruit for breakfast every morning. Until you see that he literally sticks the grapefruit into a bag of sugar and gets it covered like you would like what's the dipsticks? Is that what those things are called? The Fun Dip. Fun Dip candy. He basically treats his grapefruit like a Fun Dip into a bag of sugar, licks off all the sugar, and then discards the half of a grapefruit, which we see a trash can full of them sitting behind him.
But that's okay because they can just start buying healthy, right?
I mean, that's Marge's new mission. She goes to the Quickie Mart where she's trying to find some sugar-free products. She's excited that they even have sugar-free donuts.
No, that is sugar with free donuts.
There's a comma. Very similar to like the Lionel Hutz business card situation.
Wait,
a poo.
The thing that also bothers me about this is like stuff you can buy at the store can be very, very tricky. Again, this is where I felt personally attacked because there were times when I was younger that we would buy things that say no sugar added, and it just means there's no more sugar.
No sugar, right?
Yeah, there's no more added sugar to the initial product, so they get tricky with things like that.
Dude, I had like a problem with sugar growing up and whatnot because I just grew up in a very like health like ignorant household essentially. But yeah, like the whole like concept of sugar, man, when that Katie Couric documentary came out, like it hit me hard in like 2012 or whenever that was.
The South Park one?
No, not where she's a big piece of shit. I'm talking about the one where she talks about how shitty the United States is when it comes to how much sugar we put in everything.
Was that Katie Couric in that South Park? I don't even remember it.
That's the official scale. It's how many Courics did it weigh.
Oh, I was talking about the like early season one when Cartman goes to the third world country.
Oh,
that wasn't Katie Couric.
No, I was thinking of a different episode. My bad.
I know what you're thinking of now.
Either
cool.
way,
we can move on.
Either way, Marge is just overwhelmed that everything has sugar, and when she kind of like points that out to Pooh, Hibbert is actually there to help make her point.
Marge has a point. Sugar is not only fattening; it's also terribly, terribly addictive. Is my carton of Pixie Sticks in?
No, it hasn't come in yet.
Damn it! When they come in, you call me at this number.
And we see Hibbert hands up Pooh a piece of paper, and he opens it up, and it just reads 911. He tells Marge he's sorry, but everything in the store, from the honey glazed cauliflower to the chocolate blasted baby aspirin, comes from the mother-loving Sugar Corporation.
Well, I'm going to have to talk with them. Where are their worldwide headquarters located?
Why, they're just right down the street.
That's lucky.
I do love that, again, they're very self-aware of how it always seems just everything is conveniently located for Marge to be able to like visit in person if she needs to complain.
Even the library is within walking distance.
This is where we're going to meet the president of the Mother-Loving Sugar Company, Garth Mother-Loving, who is going over his schedule for the day, which includes things like evil deeds and racquetball.
And more evil deeds.
Excuse me.
Oh, there's two Marges in the lobby. Which one is the correct
She had
one?
so much sugar. Yeah, it's the one with a mustache is the evil one.
Excuse me. I'm looking for the head of Mother-Loving Sugar.
Yes, I'm Garth Mother-Loving.
I'm Marge Simpson. Longtime customer, first-time complainer.
Hey, Marge, I'm not up on my slang, but do kids still say, "Get the hell out of my office"?
I want you to stop putting so much sugar into everything, or at least warn people that it's so unhealthy.
Oh, yeah, that'll boost sales. While we're at it, why don't I just change my name back to Hitler?
Don't you have any sense of corporate responsibility? I wanted to throw in that. That's just for the old Rugrats fans there. I couldn't help myself.
Responsibility?
Responsibility.
Garth is getting angry at this point. He's like, look, lady, take it up with your sewing circle, okay?
But we're on hiatus. Everyone's everywhere.
He does a handheld tape recorder. Note to Marge, get out. And then he actually takes the tape out and tosses it to her, which I love her response here.
I'll play it later.
She does walk out of her office. So this is our guest star. This is Ben Stiller, who is playing Garth Mother. I'm sorry, what was it? Mother Lover?
No, Mother Loving.
Mother Loving. Yeah. That's somehow way better than what I said. But yeah, this is Ben Stiller doing this guest voice. And you said that you didn't recognize him. I instantly recognized him, but I did not feel like this was a very good use of Ben Stiller. Like he doesn't really have a good character. It's not very memorable. It doesn't utilize his energy too much, in my opinion. Like there's a couple of lines here, like the one, like, do the kids still say, get the hell out of my office? Like that has like, dodgeball vibes to me to some extent, but ultimately this just felt like a very watered down version of Ben Stiller.
It would have been better if they actually did Dwight from Dodgeball, which I think was like 2003, which I just rewatched last weekend for the first time in like 5, 6, 7, 8 years.
Hold up.
There's parts of it that maybe haven't aged so well. Since like these two men are constantly hitting on this female that clearly acts like she doesn't want either one of them. So that part's a little awkward nowadays by today's standards, but like the movie's still funny at a lot of moments. Like if they would have done, if he would have had that character energy in this one, it would have been great. My issue with why I didn't recognize him is just because of modern times. So when you've got this big dude with a black shirt on leading a corporation that's making all this money and doesn't care about people, there's so many billionaires like that in the world today that I was like, is this supposed to be Elon Musk? Is this supposed to be Steve Jobs? Like, who's this supposed to be? Like, and I couldn't get my mind around that part. And then it was like I almost wasn't giving myself time to listen to the actual voice of it. I could have had all day, and I might not have figured out it was Ben Stiller.
Interesting. Yeah, I guess just too much modern influence. I was able to look at it through a 2002 lens and see it pretty quickly. But again, I was disappointed by it, honestly, because I'll say too, I really like Ben Stiller. He has got several movies that I'm a big fan of, and I really enjoy him in Arrested Development, which he was a guest on that series not too long after this episode aired. So, I mean, like, he's kind of in the same place as he was during that. I just feel like Arrested Development really, like, took his sense of humor and, like, his absurdity and did a much better job of displaying it.
Well, back around this time, what we were talking, like, there's something about Mary from, like, maybe the late 90s, and then maybe the first Meet the Fockers at this point.
Meet the Parents?
Yeah. Second one's Meet the Fockers.
Yeah.
Like, whatever it is.
Yeah.
You know what I'm getting at.
I just think it's I totally know what you're saying. I just think it's funny because I feel like most people would probably say the second Meet the Parents and not remember Meet the Fockers, but you just went the other way with it.
I just remember the character name, so that's what I went with. I was going by who he was.
Yeah, but you're right. There's something about Mary was probably his biggest one. Mystery Men also had come out at this point, though Mystery Men is a movie that wasn't really appreciated when it came out nearly as much as it is. I loved it too, but it's just all I mean is like people love that might be how they met, frankly, but they didn't talk about it. But people appreciate Mystery Men a lot more now than they did when it first came out. It was one of those movies that kind of developed a following at the time.
It had Kel.
It did have Kel, yeah. It had a lot, and it had a lot of really funny people in it. Actually, it was a good movie, a really funny movie.
Mm-hmm.
Marge is upset with this mother-loving sugar guy, though, because she says one of the meanest things that Marge would say about him to the rest of her family. She walks in and is like, if you looked up meanie beanie faux feeny in the dictionary, you'd see his picture.
Wait, you went to a sugar factory? Were there Oompa Loompas?
There was one in a cage, but he wasn't moving.
Aww.
That company's ruining the whole town's health, and I don't know how to stop them.
Why don't you file a class action suit?
Oh, yeah, like Erin Brockovich.
The prostitute with the heart of gold.
It's not quite right. So Marge decides this is, in fact, a good idea, and she decides she's going to go and get a lawyer. But she doesn't really think they can afford one until Lisa points out that that's not a problem anymore because there are so many lawyers coming out of law school that there are now more lawyers than people. So they're basically like they kind of like drive downtown, and it's almost like the homeless people that'll do like the window washing type of stuff. They're like laying out on her car trying to get her business, and she essentially sees one that looks down on his luck, but maybe worth the risk, and allows Gil to represent them.
Well, that means they got to start discussing legal strategy. And they come up with the idea where they're going to have to go door to door to get people on board.
Which Gil is immediately like, "Oh God, no! You don't want old Gil to have to go door to door, people." And Marge is going to pay this lawyer and then do all the work herself, is what it sounds like. Yeah. And that's exactly what happens. She starts going around knocking on doors and trying to get people to support her cause to fight Sugar. The Wiggums are on board because they believe that Sugar has made Ralph hyperactive.
I'm happy and angry.
At Cletus's home, they also are on board. Oh, shoot, I'll sign. Figure those Sugar folks owe me for what they done to my cousin. And we open the door to reveal a very large woman on the floor, who he introduces as Diabetes, who I think is very appropriately going to be read by Richie.
I'm trying to slim down so I can fit into Mama's coffin.
Oh, that joke's dark enough as is, but then they add an extra little cherry on top, which he also doesn't need, because she's doing stretching exercises, and every time she gets to the end, she takes a big bite of cake.
That's my reward.
And you can tell Marge is disgusted, but happy to have Cletus's, as you already pointed out, very beautiful signature.
Mm-hmm.
And finally, we get the support for Marge from none other than Disco Stu, who got hooked on the white stuff in the 70s. And we see he's slurping up a line off the coffee table. Of course, he's doing it is in fact sugar, but he's treating it almost as if it were cocaine, as the joke here, of course.
Yeah. I guess she's got enough signatures by now, right?
Just those three people. You just need Cletus, Police Chief Wiggum, and Disco Stu, and you're good to go.
Cletus has like 20-something kids, so
that's true. They're all count.
The show's been on for 13 years, and those kids were 8 when the show started. They're all 21.
Yeah. You know what? You're right. He's got an entire voting army just sitting in a shack. He can pretty much swing the town any direction he wants it to be.
The cleanest pole shack.
When Marge gets home from her hard work, we see that Homer's sitting at the dinner table. He's wearing like a suit, and he just looks really angry. And Marge greets him. "Hi, Homer."
Well. If it isn't the woman who's too busy saving the world to save her own marriage.
What are you talking about? Is that dinner?
It was dinner.
And you see that there's a meatloaf that has burned to a crisp, and Marge is just like, "Why didn't you just turn off the oven?"
I was hoping we could do that together.
And Homer is so incapable that he was like, Marge, even though Marge is doing all this work, this implies that Marge still prepared and cooked dinner for him. All he had to do was take it out and turn the oven off at the appropriate time. And that was like the only step that he was committed to.
But he runs out of the room crying, but then he runs back in the room and grabs the burnt meatloaf and runs out of the room.
Not again, yeah. Marge is later harassed by a very, I guess, mysterious, we'll say, phone call because the guy on the other end is using a disguised voice.
Marge Simpson?
Oh,
nope.
your line of who is this? Sorry, I thought you were just gonna read from the line up there.
I thought Miles went brain dead for a second.
No, I thought we were just gonna skip those few little words there.
I'm an anonymous whistleblower. I worked on a top secret project called Operation Haven Maven.
Professor Frank?
Oh, what gave it away out of curiosity? Was it the Haven or the Maven or the whole Gehoven thing that I do?
Again, he's doing this with like a Scream style voice changing device, only something he invented himself. But that type of sound effect for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But this basically gives Marge some insight, and they bring it to trial. They're actually going before the judge, and Professor Frink is providing testimony for Marge's cause.
Well, we knew perfectly well it was addictive. Candy was at a sugar delivery system. We thought we were God, a waving maven.
Frink, you little weasel, I'll kill you.
May I remind you we're in open court?
I'll kill you too. I'll kill you all.
Mr. Mother-loving, that could be interpreted as a threat.
I'll kill you while you sleep.
Objection.
I'll allow it. The judge allows Garth Mother-lover to just threaten everybody in the court.
And then next we have a guy that looks like Count Chocula behind
he
the
is
or up
a
on the
parody
stand.
of Count Chocula. In this case, it's Count Fudgula being questioned by Gil. How long were you spokes vampire for mother-loving breakfast cereal?
20 of your mortal years. But I had to quit when my fangs succumbed to gingivitis.
But it's okay because he actually has fang dentures.
Now all my victims have to be mashed up.
And all the people, like the jury, are like, oh, poor vampire. And this is where Garth Mother-loving actually approaches the bench. Your Honor, I admit it looks bad for me, but I think you might be turned around by some surprising testimony. And he pushes a fancy briefcase towards the judge and opening it up to reveal it's full of candy.
You think it's going to be money, but it's just...
It's just candy, yeah.
Sir, this is a house of justice, not a sugar shack. It's Hershey highwaymen like you that made me fat.
Well, Your Honor, the court carries it well.
Silence! I rule in favor of Marge Simpson.
And everybody cheers, and Homer tells Marge that he's proud of her. And Judge even thanks Marge Simpson's for her damning evidence. I hereby ban all sugar products from Springfield forever. Bang, bang. And that's when Homer completely flips because he realizes by Marge winning what has just happened. And he turns to Marge and is like, get in the car.
Get in the car.
And that brings us to the end of our second act, 13 minutes, 57 seconds. Again, this is a very well balanced episode. These acts are almost identically paced and sized. And so far, to your point up top, this story has been one just cohesive story from beginning to middle so far.
Mm-hmm.
When we do open up on our third act, it is Kent Brockman reading the evening news.
Tonight's top story, Springfield Cake Hole has been shut forever. And what has been dubbed Marge's Law, all forms of sugar are now illegal.
And Homer's like, thank you, Aaron Choka Snitch. It's supposed to be like, mine said Choka. It should have been like Choka Snitch because it's like Brockovich, yeah. That was a group effort.
I'm just trying to make this a healthier place to live.
Well, good work, Blue Hair and Brockovich.
No.
Okay, that one was mine. Kent lists all of the sugary snacks that are now forbidden in Springfield. Even medicinal sugar is no longer allowed. It has to be replaced with highly concentrated opium. That seems fair.
Yeah.
We see that in an act of compliance, the Springfield police are even burning all sugary snacks, anything that will burn at least, because basically they have a pile of Butterfinger candy bars, which the fire won't burn. It just keeps spitting them back out.
Which is a great jab because Simpsons are a spokesperson for Butterfinger.
Well, they were, Richie, is the thing. They talked about this on the commentary. And Al Jean even admitted that this was kind of a shitty jab on their part because, simply put, he mentioned that Butterfinger was a really great business partner with them, that they were largely responsible, or at least partially responsible, for spreading the Simpsons popularity in the 90s. And they had a really good thing going for a really long time. But right before this episode aired, that contract came to an end, and Butterfinger decided not to renew it.
So, jab, jab, jab.
Yeah, just a little pokey poke at their former partner. I think it's all in good fun.
Either way, it won't burn, so it'll be good in the house fire.
We see at the Springfield Elementary School that people are literally, the kids specifically, are going through withdrawals hard because Principal Skinner and groundskeeper Willie are walking among the kids, and I mean, like, they're all laid out and like, sugar, need sugar.
They're not riding the white horse anymore.
Ralph is like in a panic. My baby, where's my baby? And at the Quickie Mart, the shelves have been completely stripped bare. There's almost nothing available at all. Homer is frantically searching for something, but is nothing left until he sees a stain on the floor and gets excited because there's a sticky spot that he starts to lick.
Mr. Simpson, you're licking blood and vapor rub.
And Homer stands up and just very calmly is like, part of me knew that.
Oh, that's so disgusting.
Dude. Apu is recruiting, though, and thinks that Homer might be the right man to bring sugar back to Springfield by any means necessary.
But he's got to hold on a second.
Because Homer goes back to licking the sticky spot that he now knows is blood and vapor rub. Not part of him. All of him knows that. But after his licking session is over, they go out to the Lard Lad donut statue.
A lot of L's in that sentence, Miles.
Thanks. I like alliteration. What can I say?
There you go.
The Lard Lad statue is actually a secret entrance somehow to a giant underground lair that reminds me of like Burns's castle from the Treehouse of Horror when he was Dracula.
It doesn't make sense because they go up into the Lard Lad with a ladder, but in the next shot they're going down a staircase,
spiral
down
staircase.
Below.
I guess they have to like crawl through his foot. Maybe I was also trying to like logistically figure this out and could not get it add up. Yeah. Apu leads Homer into a room where there is a round table, a panel or a committee, if you will. It's Mr. Burns and Count Fudgula sitting around the table. And Apu introduces Homer. Gentlemen, I have found the final member of our cabal.
Count Fudgula? I thought you wanted to get off the stuff.
I'm a monster. Don't look at me. And he does this like vampire shield with his cape. But yeah, the group decides that they are going to recruit him for their plan to smuggle sugar in from the south border.
Tennessee?
As Homer guesses, but it's actually the island of San Glucose. But that Tennessee thing is kind of a big deal because that implies that Springfield is in Kentucky, being the state north of Tennessee.
Or it's just that Homer's an idiot and doesn't know what state circles them.
Also, always a possibility. That gives us an easy out on most of these situations.
Mm-hmm.
For sure. So the next day, we see at the Simpsons home, Bart and Homer are dressed in their, like, sneaky clothes. They're in all black, basically, like they're about to go and pull off something illegal.
Yeah. And then we get Lisa talking to him. Is it really worth whisking? What is our deal today? Is it really worth risking your lives just for some sugar?
And you hear Marge call out, "Dessert's on! I steamed some limes." And Lisa leans into Homer.
Godspeed.
The Sugar Cabal is on a ship heading towards San Glucose. Homer is in scuba gear, and he's ready to do a back roll into the water, which I love this sequence. This is some great physical comedy because he does a back roll, but he's on the top deck of the boat, and he just lands on the bottom deck. And then he does it again correctly this time where he should be landing into the water, but now there's a whale in the way. And finally he's like, this is the last time I'm doing this. And he does a back roll off of the whale, which that raises questions because how are they going to be in the ocean, which is where whales live, and also on the northern border of Tennessee?
I think you're thinking too hard about the Tennessee thing, Miles.
Maybe. I don't know. We get an update where Bart is watching through the binoculars to see how Homer is doing, and he's kind of acting frantic, and Bart guesses, I think he's grossed out by some seaweed. And sure enough, over the walkie-talkie...
Ew, I touched it. Over.
And then Mr. Burns chimes in to motivate his employee.
Get a grip, Simpson. You're doing fine. Now, do you have your map?
We cut to Homer, who's like, kinda, and he's like wrestling a bird for his map. Come on, give it to me. I know. I'll try reverse psychology. I don't want this stupid map.
And he lets go of it.
And the bird just flies away, leaving Homer empty-handed. So
they do okay without the map.
He's still able to locate the sugar dealers, and they're able to load up his raft with sacks of sugar. Dealer tells him, okay, man, here's the sugar. Now you give us the money.
That wasn't part of the deal.
And Homer takes off running.
He's in the boat. They loaded everything into his boat.
They loaded him up, and he's removing himself from the island, going back towards the boat. The dealer, though, instead of just getting angry immediately, he actually grabs the contract. He's like, he's right. Who wrote this thing?
And all those guys like look shifty-eyeing left to right, like, not me.
Yeah. The Cabal returns to Springfield Port, where Homer asks everybody if they've all keistered their personal supply, but everybody just gives them a weird look. Yeah. But Homer was right to keister his sugar, it seems, because they are intercepted by the police. Now we have a chase happening in the water where the police boat is chasing the Cabal's boat. I love we get a really fun twist on a classic cartoon gag. It's very common in a TV show where if somebody's being chased, there'll be two men crossing the street with a panel of glass, which Al Jean asks, has anybody ever seen in real life two men holding a panel of glass crossing a street? Or does that only happen during these chase scenes? But the fun thing about this
didn't just happen in cartoons. It happened in TV shows as well.
Yeah, all sorts of comedies. You're right.
Gag.
But in this case, we get a fun twist because they're actually holding it between two boats. Homer's boat is able to go underneath the glass, but the police boat that's much larger is coming right behind it, and it has to veer away last minute not to crash through it. And then I love this as one of my favorite visual gags in the whole episode, maybe even more. I really like this joke a lot because the police boat swerves into a woman on a jet ski who has a stroller attachment hooked up to her jet ski so she can push her baby. And the cops are like, oh God, a baby. And they end up having to crash the boat into the land.
Into the land.
Having that means that Homer got away though. So I mean, if the police are crashing the boat on the beach, Homer still got his sugar and he's taken in. Garth is like, good work, Simpson.
Yeah, to be fair, everybody but Homer and Bart got out on a rowboat and left Homer and Bart on the boat by themselves.
Yeah, and they're getting all the sugar for Garth Mother Lover this whole time.
Before I bring the sugar in, I want to see the Oompa Loompa.
And Garth is like, sure, he's right over there. But he points over to a very sad-looking Oompa Loompa who's just sitting on a stool and smoking a cigarette.
That guy is freaky. Well, here's your sugar.
No, Homer. You'll be condemning this town to a life of obesity and diabetes.
Don't listen to her, Homer.
Oh, they both make good arguments. Marge makes one last plea to Homer to dump the sugar. Homer's hand is literally doing the thing where it's hovering over the two buttons that he has to control the crane
dump
he's
the cargo.
using. One's dump the sugar and the other is obey the bad guy. But after thinking about it for a moment, he decides to go with his wife and dump the sugar into the car or into the bay. And Mother Loving is defeated and he's backing away in his forklift.
But that means all the sugar's in the water.
The sugar is in the water, and the townspeople very quickly realize that because they're all so desperate for the white stuff that they dive into the bay and start drinking, as the captain calls it, "Aye, 'tis a sugary brine." Mo takes a bite out of a shark.
This sugar shark is delicious.
And then the shark bites back.
Ow, hey, he bit me back.
Then they have like a stare down, and it's like a little confrontational.
So that's how it's going to be, eh?
Marge is a little bit upset by what she sees, but even Judge Snyder comes by with an inner tube, and they start to speak with each other. Everyone looks so happy.
Indeed, Marge. And now that I think of it, I wildly exceeded my authority, and I declare the sugar ban over.
He was not maybe legally allowed to just ban sugar from everyone, it turns out. Marge is looking a little bit defeated, but Bart and Lisa are right there, and they are even wanting to get in on the sugary fun. Can we, Mom? Can we, please? Oh, all right. But take Maggie with you.
And I love that Bart immediately just jumps in the water because he just assumes Lisa's going to grab Maggie. And she does.
Yeah, 100%. That's exactly how it would play out anytime because Lisa's the more responsible 8-year-old and Bart is the fun-loving 10-year-old.
Then Homer walks up to Marge.
Marge is like, I guess you can't just use the law to nag. Maybe I should just stop trying to change the world.
No, Marge. I love when you do that. You're a regular Karen Alatovich.
Oh, that's the best one.
That's what I told Lisa.
We see the camera pan down to the water where everybody is having a great time in the sugary brine, but Lenny surfaces from under the water and he's holding what he thinks are pearls, but quickly discovers, oh, no, wait, they're just my teeth. Well, I can still make a necklace out of them. And we cut into Lenny's partially toothless smile as we close our third act at 20 minutes and 57 seconds. Again, a perfectly balanced episode. That brings us to the end of our third act and to the end of Sweet and Sour Marge. There is one last shot during the credits. It's a picture of Bleeding Gums Murphy along with a line dedicating this to the memory of Ron Taylor. Ron Taylor, the voice of Bleeding Gums Murphy, had passed away just less than a week before this episode aired, so they were able to get that in and added to the production of the episode last minute.
Very nice fitting send-off, especially when it's a sugar episode and his name is Bleeding Gums.
That is kind of appropriate, isn't it? That's funny.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, interesting. But yeah, that's it for Sweet and Sour Marge. Rich, is there anything else that you or that book of yours want to talk about before we call it a day?
Yeah, we glossed over the flaming pile of sugar where they tried to burn a replica Johnny Depp from the movie Chocolat.
Oh, yeah.
And hasn't that man been through enough lately, Miles?
I think actually he didn't just get burned recently.
Oh, Miles for the save. No, like reviewing the episode, I said at the top that it might have been a little bit below the others, but after reviewing it and just remember how much I was laughing, I guess it is just right up there with the rest of the season at this point, except for that one episode that will remain nameless. So it's so baffling to me. It just the preconceived notion that the Simpsons are supposed to be bad at this point. And like I go into each episode knowing in the back of my mind that is common thought. And it's so weird to watch the episode and be laughing. And I still wonder if it's one of those things where you're expecting the worst. And since it's not the worst, if it's even a little bit better, maybe that I'm overplaying it in my head. But I still feel like all these episodes have been better than the end of season 12. Like by a long shot.
I would agree. 13 is a revival season. I know we were. I mentioned, I think during our spectacular show that that's a common conception that 12 is a dip and 13 is a revival. And I think that we're going to just kind of get into a place moving forward where we're going to have to expect some still plenty of highs, but probably the occasional lows that give it the reputation that it has. And also just again, I mean, we're getting close to our like 300th episode of The Simpsons that we're going to be reviewing soon. I think that's the one where Tony Hawk's in it, if I remember right. I don't know exactly where that falls, but it's
300 or 500.
It cannot possibly be that far away, is what I'm getting at, because we are now we're past a third of the way through season 13 already.
Mm-hmm.
It's going fast.
It's coming up fast, man.
It's going really fast. I did have one other thing that I wanted to talk about, that an interesting conversation that came up about hand-drawn cells versus computer animation. At this point, The Simpsons has been dabbling with computer animation for a while, but there are still plenty of hand-drawn cells. However, that is coming to an end because this is the last season that hand-drawn cells are actually used for production purposes. They are still very much, though, a popular collector's item. So in future seasons, they still make hand-drawn cells specifically for collectors and things of that nature, the staff of the Simpsons as well. And that also brought up an interesting conversation that the ball that we talked about earlier was like ravenously bought up by the Simpsons staff themselves because they all wanted to try to get a cell that had like the ball of Simpsons like rolling through because they just all thought it was such a cool shot. And I talked about how much work went into the animation of that earlier. But post season 13, there will not be any more use of hand-drawn cells for production purposes.
That's so crazy to think about.
Yeah, it's kind of wild, honestly. And just already how much The Simpsons have changed looking at season 13 in 2002 back to when they started in 89.
We're still 20 years away from current time. 20 and a half years, technically, because we're in August.
Yeah. Well, and we've now covered, I mean, really 90 because it barely started in 89. So if you go, we've basically covered now 11 years of the show, and we still have 22 plus to go.
We're a third of the way there, peeps.
It's kind of, well, I mean, but they keep going, so not really.
Maybe we'll always
the math gets harder on that because of the fact that episodes are getting produced still. But either way,
much like life, it's ever changing.
It's always changing. But that's going to do it for this week's show, guys. Just like we're having a good time watching 13, I hope you all are having a good time listening to these reviews with us. We appreciate you tuning in. I keep seeing people posting on like the old YouTube videos or like saying that they're discovering the show for the first time. So, I guess I'm saying this to people that might get here eventually, we hope. But it really is. It's awesome to have you guys supporting us and doing this Simpsons thing. Thank you so much.
Yeah, that's excellent. So thank you for that. You can follow Miles at Mr. Most Days Off all over social media. You can follow me at TheWiz_Kid23. But as always, make sure you follow our show. It's at Best Darn Diddly. That is DIDDLY.
Make sure you come back again next week because Richie and I are going to try an extreme diet while we review the episode Jaws Wired Shut.
And I really hope the kids don't tell us to get the hell out of their office.
Until next time, be cromulent to each other.